Welcome, artists, visitors, and anyone who just wants to learn more about painting, especially pastel painting. This is a cute little painting, another one of my little mini paintings, only 2.5 by 3.5 inches. You can see it just barely fits in the palm of my hand. These work well for a busy life and sometimes just to keep loose and have fun. But I got this reference photo from, it's kind of an exotic place. I'm not sure if you can go there. I'm totally kidding. It's Home Depot or Lowe's maybe. I can't remember. But you can find wonderful places to get reference photos in your own backyard or hardware store or nursery, whatever might be convenient for you. So first let me talk about the color palette. I like to talk about how to choose colors, and for this one I'm just basically using a complementary color palette. The photo had a lot of pinks and greens in it, so if you notice, let me turn that around so you can see the complement. Right there it says complementary, and it's really whatever is across from each other on the color wheel. So I had a lot of pinks and greens, so this is a complementary color palette. You can see I've got my grouping of pinks for the flowers, my grouping of greens for the grasses and the leaves, and a little bit for the sky. Now what I'm using here is, it's just a piece of willow charcoal. I like charcoal because you can kind of brush it off easily, and it just feels artistic and free. But you could use a pencil, you could use a harder pastel. But what I'm doing now, I'm not even working on my little piece of pastel paper. I wanted to use this as an example. Typically, or here lately, I've been putting the pastel colors that I choose down on just a regular piece of paper like this little piece of drawing paper. But I thought I'd go ahead and sketch it out because I often do this just to get the idea of the composition. But I also thought this would be a neat way for you to see why we use sanded surfaces in pastel, or we typically use sanded surfaces. So again, this is just a piece of plain flat drawing paper, and I'm actually going to apply the pastels to it for an initial sketch and to get the idea. But you're going to be able to pretty easily see when I finally decide to do it on the pastel paper the difference. Now right now I'm putting in, a lot of times in skies, you do a little bit of a combination of colors to kind of bring interest. But I wanted to make note as well that in this photograph, notice all of the busyness in the photo. If you look to the right, there's like a planter or a garbage can or something. There's some doors back there and some marks in the sidewalk, and that's very distracting. We want to make this all about the flowers and make just a pretty subtle background. So that's why I've decided to lose all that detail, and that's something you learn to do more the more you paint and start to work from reference photos or real life actually. So now I'm just getting in really the basics. I'll talk a little bit more about this when I get on the actual sanded paper, but I like to get in kind of the generalities of where the flowers are going to be. And typically in pastels we work dark to light, so I like to put in those dark centers of the flowers, even darker than they are, because I know I'm going to be layering the lighter on top of them. Now because this is drawing paper, notice what's happening here. I can get a layer or two, like that one didn't have much, but when you start putting more than 2 layers on top of each other, they get dull. You can't even see the layers anymore. You can get about 1 layer, maybe a little bit of 2 on a piece of drawing paper. You're going to see such a difference when we go to the sanded UArt paper that's to the right. Now this piece of drawing paper is about I don't even think it's a 5 by 7. It's pretty small, maybe a 3 by 5. Whereas the UArt paper, the creamy colored paper there to the right, is a 2.5 by 3.5. Like I said, it's what's called an ACEO, which is an acronym that stands for Art, Cards, Editions, and Originals. It's just a name for this particular size that's very common. I actually like the name Artist Trading Cards better. If you want to see the history of it, I have another video about 3 videos back on my channel that explains a little bit about how these little artist trading cards got started. It's kind of neat. And I'm liking them mostly because my life's a real busy. Maybe one day I'll give a little bit more about what's happening right now, but I like to focus mostly on the art. So you can see me just busily working here. I think I've only got this sped up 2 times, so it's not like a super speed painting. But for this little example on the regular paper, it suffices. Now notice I just added one of those flowers. There's a couple, if you squint your eyes and look at the reference photo, there's a couple that have more red in them, and it gives a little bit of variety. And that's one thing I wanted to talk about too, is flowers have variety. They have personality just like people. So one of the things that I can, just because I've been painting a long time, trust me, I've made all these mistakes too, but I can easily identify an artist who kind of studies nature and has been painting a while. You learn that you have to change with flowers. They move, they turn, they reflect light differently. So if you're doing flowers, you don't want to make them all look the same. There's a beautiful harmony in nature, and God has a neat way of something, flowers and fields looking like a beautiful symphony, and yet everything doesn't lean the same way, reach the same way, or look the same way. If you're familiar with music, I play guitar and sing, and my two older sons are actually professional musicians, but if you're familiar with something in music called dissonance, it's a way that there's a little note or a little sound that's just a tad off, but it adds to the beauty of the music and the composition of the piece. And that's kind of the same way in nature. Sometimes there's one that's just, everything's little kind of harmonious and going along just fine. And then there's this one flower that just sticks his head up, reaching towards the sun, and it just really makes a statement and makes it even more beautiful. So again, I'm babbling on, but you can see how these flowers are reaching different ways and turning different ways. And even though there is a beautiful randomness to nature, there is also the order that is still there. So as artists, we need to make sure that we do have things anatomically and as far as structure of flowers and trees and limbs. I've actually wanted to do a video on something that I've been fascinated by and love to study. The order that's in nature is someone by the last name of Fibonacci many years ago. I need to get the history of all this. Discovered that there's a pattern to all of nature, and it ended up being called the Fibonacci sequence. And it's just an amazing mathematical sequence of how things grow, how things have the order in all of the universe, not just in flowers and trees. But again, that's a deep topic, and it's a fascinating topic. So perhaps one day I'll do a video on that, because I think as artists it helps us to know these things and to know how our world beautifully works like a symphony. So, now I'm doing the little bee there. Basically, I learned this technique from Karen Margulis. She has a little way she makes like 3 little black dots, then she adds a little dark like orange on it, then a bright yellow, then 2 little wings, and this one doesn't have to be great because it's just the little sketch. So anyway, it's just a neat little way to do a bee, and it doesn't have to be perfect because it's it's little. So now I'm just using the willow charcoal to add in the stems, and again, this is just the sketch, but you can see now that the pastels, they don't adhere to that paper very well, and I'm not able to get the brightness and the boldness from this that I will be able to when you see me with the other paper. Now there is little Precious there. I still don't have a name. I've got a lot of names from you guys that I loved. Oh my gosh, all you guys gave some awesome names for her. Jackson says, what's happening here? Did someone steal my show? Anyway, if you have a cute little name for the kitty I rescued, that would be awesome. It is a girl. All right, so now I'm just working on these flowers again. I hope you're not hearing the buzzing sound behind me. It's my husband actually mowing the lawn. Sometimes you got to make these videos just, when you can. Again, a little quick sketch with the willow charcoal, which is also called vine charcoal, V-I-N-E. It comes in different widths. This is just a little skinny one because it's a little painting, and it sufficed for these purposes. So I just basically get in the flowers again where I think they will kind of randomly look nice and not have too much of a samey pattern, and so it's basically just to get my general sketch in. Now I'm kind of just recreating what I did in the other sketch because I liked how it went, and I'm kind of using a light touch here and getting that background in just kind of soft, and I'm gonna paint a little while here and let you enjoy the music and make a few comments as I see needed. Something that's really important to consider with every painting is the light. You saw me point there. I'm pointing at where the direction of the light appears to be. When I analyze the photograph, it appears that the light is kind of coming from the top right. If you look at that flower in the photograph on the lower left corner, the kind of one that's facing right at you, little round, kind of chunky one, you can see how the light is on those upper petals, but the lower petals are more in the shadow. So hence, most of the petals that are drooping down underneath or lower are going to be shadowed. The ones kind of upper right are going to be a little brighter and lighter in value. So when you keep those things consistent in your painting, it just makes for more believability. And again, that's how the world works. Now this is my little tool I used in the last video. I happened to discover using my daughter-in-law and my son have this product that's an amazing selection of makeup brushes. It's 4 in a kit, and I never used this one that's shaped this way, so I had to get into a little area and I couldn't quite do it with my pipe foam insulation I normally use, so I thought, let me try this little brush. And oh my goodness, I was very pleased with how they blend. I actually have the ones that are more round and bigger are great for blending larger areas. So I asked my son if anybody else wanted to try them Of course, you can try them for makeup brushes, ladies, if you would like to. They're amazing. But if you'd like to try them, he actually knocked $50 off the price. So and I'm, I'm just throwing this out there, and I like them. I don't know if you would like them, but if you want to try, the website, I'll put it in the About section, or I'll stick it up here, is Ovel, O-V-E-L, beauty.com. The set of 4 brushes is normally $79, so $80 basically plus shipping. He knocked off $50, so there'll be $29, or basically $30 plus shipping for a nice 4-piece makeup brush set that doubles as pastel blenders. So anyway, I'll give more of my own critique and information about these as I use them more. But for now, I'm loving them. They work great. So now what I'm doing is you know how I talk a lot about putting in sky holes for trees? Basically with trees, you don't paint the leaves, you paint the negative shapes. In other words, you paint more of a big blob as a tree, and you carve out the sky holes to make the indication of a tree instead of drawing the leaves or the tree as its shape. So that's kind of what you do with anything that's in mass like this, like these flowers. If you look like in the photograph, that kind of area in the back, there's one little flower sticking up almost in the middle, not quite, and you kind of come down the stem, and that you can see those negative shapes in the leaves. So it's better to carve in those negative shapes than it is to try to draw the leaves, so that's what I did. I kind of put in the mass of the darker, because it's a darker value down in those leaves. I blended it with my little blender or whatever tool you have, and then I'm carving in the leaves. And also too, notice the subtle differences in color. All the flowers are not the same color. Again, I mentioned in the sketch one, a couple of them have a little bit more of reddish hues to them, and some of them have more of that salmon kind of color, more of a peachy color. So when you get variety like that, not only because of the different subtleties in the flower color, but the differences based on where they are in the shadow or in the light, again, that's just going to make it more believable, more real, and more like fine art. So just keep those things in mind when you're doing flowers. Now I needed a few more darks in here, so I'm just going in and carving in where those dark parts are. Typically in fields, when you have roots down at the bottom of the grasses, or flowers when you have a grouping of them, down in the center is typically where you get your darker values. So that's just kind of a general rule of thumb. So just playing around here a little more, having fun. These little ones, I am really having fun with these. So I've noticed too that some of you are recreating from these videos. There's a couple people on Instagram that have shared their rendition of some of these smaller paintings that I've done, and wow, you guys are amazing. I'm sometimes like, wow, I know I started this group and everything, but we've got some artists of excellent skill, and the great thing is, everybody's so wonderful about sharing. You don't get a lot of the vibe of, I'm not going to share my technique. Because you know what's the neat thing about art is, even if you tried to emulate my style exactly, or another artist's style exactly, you're still going to have your own little variation and your own little uniqueness. That's how God made us. We're individuals, and we're not all meant to be exactly the same. So your style will come in time, the more you work, and it'll be yours, not mine or another artist. So I love that. All right, we're getting a lot accomplished here, so I'm just going to let you listen to the music and enjoy for a little while.